From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. The final debate for the presidential election in El Salvador was held on Sunday, ahead of the February 3rd elections. Issues debated included crime, the economy and employment, foreign policy, education, and health. Three of the main candidates presented their proposals and spoke about foreign policy with respect to relations with the United States. The candidate of the right-wing Ghana coalition, Nayib Bukele, was absent. Hugo Martinez, the candidate of the ruling FMLN, spoke after the debate.
I feel very satisfied. I think I clearly demonstrated my proposals. I think I clearly demonstrated my point of view, and I'm personally convinced that, based on what I've heard by phone call, on social media, through messages, I'm convinced that I won this debate. But here the big winner isn't Hugo Martinez, it's the Salvadorian people, because the Salvadorian people were able to see the level of preparation that each of us have.
Our correspondent in San Salvador, Ernesto Ábalos, has more details about this debate.
Here in El Salvador, 3 of the 4 candidates for the presidency took part in the second debate, organized by the Association of Salvadoran Radios and some private universities. Carlos Calleja of the Arena Party, Hugo Martinez of the FMLN, and Josué Alvarado of the Vamos Party were those who took part. The main absence was Nayib Bukele of the right-wing Ghana coalition. This is the second time he's declined to participate in a presidential debate. The main topics addressed in this debate were domestic issues like the economy, education, healthcare, and most importantly, the violence that the country is suffering. At the end of the debate, the candidates gave a brief news conference. Hugo Martinez claimed to have won the debate, and Carlos Calleja said he would keep all his campaign promises to different sectors of society. This was the last debate before the elections on the 3rd of February.
That was Ernesto Ábalos from El Salvador. And now to Venezuela. President Nicolás Maduro is preparing to take an oath before the National Constituent Assembly. Maduro was sworn in for his second term on Thursday before the Supreme Court. On Monday, he will appear before the country's highest body, the Constituent Assembly, to ratify his mandate from 2019 to 2025. He will also lay out the Plan de la Patria, the Bolivarian Revolution's strategic program that was first drawn up by Hugo Chávez. On Sunday, the president of Venezuela's opposition-controlled National Assembly, Juan Guaidó, was briefly detained by members of the Bolivarian Intelligence Service, who authorities say were acting on their own account. The country's Minister of Communication explained the situation.
We found out about an irregular situation in which a group of state officials acted unilaterally against Representative Juan Guaidó. The issue has been solved. It only served to create the usual media show and the setup of false positives. Those state officials who took part in this circus that endangered the everyday life of citizens have already been dismissed from the force. They are currently being disciplined in the most strict manner. We will find out the real story behind this act.
The communications minister said Ildemaro José Rodríguez Múcura was the person allegedly behind the detention of Guaidó Rodríguez. Rodríguez announced the name in a tweet and also said the man is linked to the country's far-right opposition. He is currently being questioned for his involvement. And following the detention, the Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza issued a statement condemning what he called the ongoing coup attempts of a supremacist elite controlled by the White House. 10 out of 12 countries that have backtracked on supporting the declaration by the so-called Lima Group attacking Venezuela's sovereignty. Let's find out more.
Peace and democracy triumph in Venezuela. That is what Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza said during a news conference, a stage where he used to clarify the anti-meddling stance of the country.
Es importante decir It is important to highlight that to err is human, but it is wise to right our wrongs. And we believe that diplomacy in the region has won out and international law is being respected. Despite our differences and the ongoing attacks against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and its government, politicians have chosen the right path.
Arreaza recalled that the Bolivarian government delivered 11 official complaint letters to the countries that underwrote paragraph 9 of a statement by the so-called Lima Group.
Our complaints were delivered to all governments of the Lima cartel, demanding that they rectify their position towards Venezuela. Within 48 hours, or our government would have been forced to take the most urgent diplomatic actions in defense of our integrity, sovereignty, and dignity.
The political climate has been marked by threats from the United States in the days prior to the presidential swearing-in ceremony for Nicolás Maduro. But international and local support was also present.
Issues in Venezuela are resolved in Venezuela by us, citizens, and we are proof of that. We are here showing the popular force of the people, showing that our president is ratified once more.
A new deadline has been given until Monday for the government of Paraguay and Canada to rectify their positions in favor of international law. The Bolivarian government has assured they will defend self-determination to the end.
In other news, the former left-wing activist Cesare Battisti has arrived in Italy after Interpol arrested him in Bolivia. Italian police escorted him off the plane in Rome. A former member of the Armed Proletarians for Communism, who later became a crime writer, Battisti is wanted for 4 alleged murders during the 1970s. He has denied responsibility for the deaths, and he was granted refuge status in Brazil by then-President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, which was later revoked by former President Michel Temer. A hike in fuel prices has sparked protests in Zimbabwe. Demonstrations erupted in the capital, Harare, and in the second city, Bulawayo, on Saturday. President Emerson Mnangagwa announced increases of about 150% in the price of gasoline and diesel. The move was intended to improve supplies as the country struggles with its worst shortages in a decade. The Turkish government has responded to President Donald Trump's threat to devastate Turkey economically if it attacks the Syrian Kurds of the YPG. The foreign minister in Ankara said his country would not bow to threats, but was ready to talk to Trump about a possible buffer zone.
We can see the difficult situation that Mr. Trump is in now. There is a serious pressure on him. He took the decision to withdraw. However, the security chiefs are putting constant pressure on him to stop the withdrawal. And we know that the latest tweet is a domestic policy message. But as I said previously, strategic partners, allies, do not communicate over Twitter or social media. We have to continue discussing these issues bilaterally.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in Saudi Arabia as part of his efforts to explain President Trump's announcement that he would withdraw U.S. troops from Syria. A senior figure in the Saudi royal family earlier said that the withdrawal would have a negative impact in the region. Pompeo was also expected to ask the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman for an update on the investigation into the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. A day ahead of a crucial vote in Parliament, the British Prime Minister is trying to win support for her deeply unpopular Brexit deal. This weekend, thousands of demonstrators in London demanded early elections to resolve the Brexit impasse. Theresa May is now trying to convince pro-Brexit members of Parliament that a vote against her deal with the EU is likely to mean that Brexit does not happen at all. All the predictions are that May will lose the vote on Tuesday. Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party says it will then bring a motion of no confidence in the government. More stories coming up. We'll be back. Welcome back. More protests are planned for Monday in Guatemala against President Jimmy Morales and his decision to shut down a UN anti-corruption mission. Last week, Morales notified the United Nations that the International Commission Against Impunity in Guatemala would close early, but the country's constitutional court ordered the government to continue cooperating with the commission. The UN body came under fire from Morales after it sought to investigate him on suspicion of campaign finance violations.
We want to tell the world that Guatemala is living through a crisis generated by the government of Jimmy Morales, by the financial elite and by the military.
People are tired of this. People want to see a government that works for them, that gives them solutions, and does not use security forces to intimidate us and to seek impunity.
It's been 2 weeks since Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro took office. Already, the far-right politician has rolled out several orders against the poorest. Among them is an order to cancel the social housing program. Our correspondent in Sao Paulo, Brian Meir, tells us how this is affecting people.
Lizene da Costa is starting her day in one of São Paulo's biggest squats.
Here in the city center, we have had some big challenges, because the brutal capitalist system has always seen the center of the city as a part to be preserved and cultivated for the powerful, the bourgeoisie.
The 1988 Brazilian Constitution guarantees the right for poor people to occupy vacant buildings where the owners have failed to pay their real estate taxes. In 2011, the MMC social movement occupied this vacant federal government building, one of around 40 occupied buildings in downtown São Paulo. Lizene da Costa is a manicurist who moved here to be closer to her work. It used to take her 3 hours to commute.
These days it takes me just 10 minutes to walk to work. It's really good living downtown. That's why I live here.
According to Brazilian law, the government has to convert legally occupied buildings into social housing. But now President Jair Bolsonaro has canceled the National Social Housing Program, and his institutional security chief, General Augusto Heleno, says they will begin monitoring social movements.
Bolsonaro has been making constant threats against social movements since he was elected, with the intention of monitoring them and transforming them into criminal organizations.
We have to continue the fight to see what happens. But this government is going to be very difficult. They're not going to pay any attention to the working class.
As budget cutbacks and attacks against the working class social movements increase on all fronts, the 7.7 million Brazilians who are denied decent housing continue to push for their right to the city. Not just to live in cities and access their services, but to change them in the way that best suits their needs, one step at a time. Brian Meir, Telesur, São Paulo.
An assassination attempt against Brazilian Labour Party lawmaker Marta Rocha took place in Rio de Janeiro. Local reports say that a vehicle blocked Rocha's car and at least 4 hitmen exited the vehicle. They opened fire on Rocha's car in the historic Peña neighborhood. Political violence has been ramping up since last March, when Rio's municipal council member Mariel Franco was murdered. In Argentina, Ebe de Bonafini, the leader of the Mothers of Plaza de Mayo, has been accused by right-wing lawmakers of inciting mob violence. The criminal complaint will be submitted tomorrow by 2 Cambiemos lawmakers, following remarks by the social leader during her weekly trip to the Plaza de Mayo. Bonafini criticized a plan by the government of Mauricio Macri to purchase tasers to be used by police officers. Bonafini suggested in clear irony that the tasers, which would be used against citizens, first be tested on the daughter of President Macri and the relatives of another congresswoman from Macri's party. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has already put one of his most popular campaign promises into action: a plan to help senior citizens.
As years go by, more and more people become senior citizens in Mexico. They are hopeful that their living conditions will improve, thanks to a government program that has just started operating.
It is almost my turn, so they signed me up because come March I am entitled to the support program for seniors.
The program provides economic support for citizens who are 68 and older, a sector of the population that had long been left to fend for themselves.
Our president has taken this responsibility upon himself. The needs of the people must be met, according to the Constitution.
During an event in the state of Mexico, the president delivered on one of his most important campaign promises.
Starting tomorrow, you will start receiving this support. It will be given to 2.5 million senior citizens.
The goal of this program is to give all senior citizens a pension of approximately $150, but with a clear distinction for those most vulnerable.
We will provide support for indigenous citizens starting at the age of 65, because they have always had to face great inequality.
According to the government, this plan will benefit over 8.5 million senior citizens.
López Obrador has also spoken about the difficulties caused by the shortages of fuel and smuggling in some states. He asked people to avoid hoarding fuel in fear of shortages.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, from the bottom of my heart, for supporting us in our fight against fuel theft. The so-called huachicol is illegal, immoral, and an act of corruption that we are dealing with. It's causing a lot of trouble because there will be a temporary disruption in the distribution of fuel. We have enough gasoline and diesel reserves for the country. It's just a matter of changing the distribution system and taking control of pipelines.
A moment of pride for Ecuadorians as a local mountaineer with disabilities, Santiago Quintero, made it to the top of the Chimborazo volcano. He made the 6,000-meter climb in just 24 hours. Our correspondent, Denise Herrera, has more.
The 44-year-old Ecuadorian mountaineer has set a new record in his homeland. Chimborazo is the highest mountain in Ecuador and also the highest near the equator. Its location along the equatorial bulge makes its summit the farthest point on the Earth's surface from the Earth's center. The ascent was brutal, but Santiago was able to successfully navigate the rugged terrain.
The project began on December 2nd. We left from Babahoyo at 5 a.m. and arrived at 7 p.m. to the refuge. I did not think it would be so fast. I rested, had some water, and we left again at 11 in the night. We slept for just 1 hour. We climbed 6,000 meters in 24 hours, but by the time we got to 5,900, we had loose snow. Very dangerous. We would have had to return because of risk of avalanches, but we evaluated that we were two and that we could take the risk. We reached the summit at 8 a.m.
Santiago endured 8 months of rigid training to prepare for this ambitious expedition. Every day he would ride his bike for hours. Night training sessions were also part of his routine. It was an exercise in resilience and determination. While training, he failed 4 times before he finally made it to the top.
Climbing has allowed me to exceed not only physical but mental limitations. It was very cold. The journey was difficult. At times during the climb, I would hear a voice in my head saying, "It is complicated, it is complicated." But my personal mantra, "It is easy and it can be done," would drown that potentially destructive voice. I told myself I am in perfect health. I have strength and the will to achieve the goal I set for myself. I discarded all negative thoughts, such as, "I am tired" or "my legs hurt." And this is how I reprogrammed my brain in order to push ahead.
In February 2002, Santiago reached the summit of Aconcagua, the Western Hemisphere's highest peak. The ascent was punishing. Half his right foot and the toes of his left would need to be amputated. After intense rehabilitation, he was back at the summit of a mountain, this time Cotopaxi, the second highest peak in Ecuador.
This project has taken me 10 years to fulfill and has taken me to reach the summit of 8 mountains without using oxygen. So I feel blessed and grateful to God, and I will keep on going.
A Venezuelan doctor has helped create a customized prosthesis and a specially designed shoes for Santiago. The mountaineer helped in the design. They help relieve the pain in his feet and facilitate better mobility. Apart from his raw determination and grit, these are the tools which are essential to his record-breaking mountain climbing success. Denise Herrera, Telesur Quito, Ecuador.
An honor for all Ecuadorians. And we're taking one last break, but stay with us. Welcome back. People in the Democratic Republic of Congo are questioning the role of the church in politics. Worshippers raised questions after the bishops' conference repeatedly challenged the presidential election results. The runner-up in December's presidential election, Martin Fayulu, has appealed to the Constitutional Court to annul the provisional results, which gave victory to his opposition rival, Felix Tshisekedi.
The church has done enough. I think they should stop here to avoid any misdemeanor. I think the church spoke the truth, but it does not have the right to take on the role of the Constitutional Court.
And Africa's oldest liberation movement, the African National Congress, celebrated its 107th anniversary in the city of Durban in South Africa. President Cyril Ramaphosa led the celebrations, promising sweeping changes for all. Our special contributor in South Africa, Ayesha Ismail, brings us more.
Thousands of African National Congress members gathered at the Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban to celebrate the 107th anniversary of the ruling party. President Cyril Ramaphosa also used the occasion to launch the ANC's election manifesto. He said his government would be prioritizing job creation, investment, education and health.
This year, we also celebrate the 25th anniversary of the achievement of democracy. We celebrate 25 years of freedom. We celebrate the fact that South Africa today is a better place, a nation united in its diversity, working together to overcome the injustices of the past. It is a nation that is founded on a democratic and progressive constitution that guarantees equal rights to all our people.
More than 9 million South Africans are unemployed. But President Ramaphosa says working with labor, business and communities will create thousands of new jobs and ensure that workers can earn a decent living. The election manifesto was well received, especially by the ANC's alliance partners.
The alliance has been an integral part and component of the development of the manifesto from all stages. But what one can also say is that this manifesto is a manifesto of the people. There's been an elaborate process to engage with our communities and all various social sectors of our country to develop this manifesto.
While admitting that the ANC-led government had made mistakes, President Ramaphosa called on all South Africans to work together to grow South Africa. Aisha Ismail, Telesu, Durban, South Africa.
Demonstrators took to the streets of Khartoum in Sudan to protest against President Omar al-Bashir and the country's ongoing economic crisis. Fighting eventually broke out after they were confronted by security forces. Protesters braved a heavy police presence, but they were met with tear gas and chased down side streets. Protesters started back in December due to a hike in the price of bread, among other economic hardships. The Egyptian parliament has extended a state of emergency. The measure was first imposed in 2017 after a bombing at a church. On Sunday, the parliament approved a 3-month extension. It said that current security challenges in the country mean that the measure must be kept in place. A delegation of Iranian lawmakers met with Syrian officials in Damascus on Sunday. The group of parliamentarians are visiting the country to support Iran's ongoing role in reconstruction efforts. This takes place just days after U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo threatened to expel all Iranian forces in Syria, as Washington has reportedly begun a troop withdrawal. And that brings us to the end of this news brief. But these and other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And we're also on social media, so go ahead and follow us. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.